Mom was the one who bought me my very first book about the presidents, a book called The Buck Stops Here.
My first readers always is my mother. I think she's my first editor. And I think she reads my book like 4 or 5 times since the first draft to the 18th draft.
My mom is one of my favorite people in the whole wide world, and she is the reason that I'm a reader today. Books were not a luxury in our house, they were a necessity. And that's something that I hope that I've passed on to my family.
I remember borrowing my mother's copy of The Bell Jar when I was like 8 or 9 years old, and Fran came cruising by and said, you know, Jenny, what is that book about? And I said, oh, it's by this very sad lady named Saliva Plath.
My son is 20 months old and he loves to be read to. And he's gotten to the point that he is trying to read to me, which is pretty adorable because he can't actually read, but he points to the pictures and sort of narrates what he thinks is happening.
With my own kids, I read with them every night, and I've done this every night since they were little babies.
My mom, being a librarian, gifted me quite a few books over the years, but one of them that stands out is My Side of the Mountain, a book that I recently read to my young daughter.
On Mother's Day, of course, the first person I think about is my late mother. But I'm also thinking about the very first Alelia, my great-grandmother, Alelia Walker. In the late 1960s, I discovered books from her library in my grandfather's apartment. And I think this was part of what sparked my interest in African American literature and made me want to write about these amazing women in my family.
I think one of the reasons I became a writer was because of my mother's bookshelf and the books that I stole to read. And they included Shirley Jackson, everything that she wrote, and The Catcher in the Rye, and books that I wasn't supposed to read, but which I read anyway.
Most of all, my mother and I read books together. And that tradition is one that I kept up with my children. And now I see my daughters give the same books to their children, my grandchildren.
When I was a kid, we used to have all these long car rides. For every vacation or every holiday we had to go someplace, we'd be in the car forever. And I remember my mom giving me a stack of comic books to bring in the car one time. And that began my love affair with reading and with comic books and with art, and inspired me to make my own superheroes and my own stories.
My mother was the best storyteller out of everyone. She has such a good sense of pace and rhythm and humor and seriousness.
She has given so many copies of my books away to like pretty much every kid she meets ends up getting a copy of one of my books. And she is definitely my biggest cheerleader.
In so many ways, my mom set me on the path of being not only a writer, but a reader.
Thanks, Mom, and happy Mother's Day.